in my last year of teaching, and I'm retiring at the end of the year, I can honestly say that people in my department have done nothing but shower me with love. And, you know, it was already overwhelming. And then getting nominated for this award and then winning it was not only humbling, because I know that the people who've come before me have done great things, but I'm just honored and blessed to be here. And I'd really like to thank Keith and Katie and all the members of the IJEA board for honoring me this way. You know, it really is a capstone for me, and I couldn't have scripted it any better. So, you know, there are a lot of teachers that I've had. I mean, we are all the product of good teachers. And I think one of the things we don't always appreciate is what we do ourselves. I think it's often easy to get kind of lost in the minutiae of our jobs, the frustrations and stuff. So if you'll bear with me for a couple minutes, I need to thank a few people. The first person I need to thank is my grandmother, Beatrice Hall, who is no longer here. She's been gone for almost 30 years. But she was the best teacher I ever had. And I'm going to explain why. She was the wife of a Methodist minister. She was an elementary school teacher in the city of Aurora. And I was born with a physical, a congenital birth defect called arthrogryposis in 1965. And my grandmother had just retired from teaching at that point. And she decided to go back to work to earn some money for my college because she knew that I needed to go to college. And in 1970, my mother, who was also an elementary school teacher, took me to the Downers Grove Public Schools to have me enrolled. Now, at the time, I really couldn't do very many of my own ADLs. I could barely feed myself. I couldn't dress myself. I couldn't even go to the bathroom myself. And, you know, the Downers Grove Public Schools, where I wanted to go, said, no, sorry. And they were not required at that time to accept me. In fact, there was one famous story of a girl who ended up suing her school district because she was in a wheelchair. And they said, no, because you're a fire hazard. And that was the actual excuse that they gave for denying her an education. Anyway, so I ended up at a school up in Elmhurst, Illinois. It was a regular elementary school with a segregated classroom for physically disabled kids. One teacher, one aide, and 3 grade levels. So this teacher was teaching first, second, and third grade, all at the same time. It was not an ideal learning environment for me by any shape of the imagination. And the reality is, by the end of second grade, I could barely read. I think my mother said I was reading at about a post-kindergarten level, basic word attack skills, and I really was behind. I think I learned a few things. But it wasn't really very good. You know, and Mrs. Malloy, I think, did the best that she could. I mean, this was a situation where the institution literally set her up for failure. I mean, there was really no way that she could teach 15 of us simultaneously. So it was a difficult situation. You know, but at the time, I don't think anybody really expected. I mean, it was better than being put into an institution. Because had I been born maybe 20 or 30 years earlier, it's unlikely that I would have gone to school at all. I could have been institutionalized. It happened to a lot of disabled kids. And so I don't think anybody really expected me to succeed. And so it was okay. And, you know, as a child, it was difficult. I had lots of surgeries. But I'm going to tell you one thing about school. I absolutely loved it. Because I didn't have to do anything. It was awesome. I got to play in the sandbox. I had a girlfriend. I got to look in the mirror and make faces all day. It was awesome. I loved school. But then reality set in. And the reality was called Beatrice Hall, who's my grandmother. And, you know, I told you she had raised some money for me. And so this was not good news because she was not going to get any kind of return on her investment. And so my mother went to Miss Malloy and demanded it or asked for materials. And my grandmother got them, and she tutored me individually for 2 summers, every day. She not only tutored me, she coached me. She'd call me in the afternoon. We'd study all morning and call me in the afternoon and do flashcards with me again and again and again and again and again. And the woman caught me up. And had it not been for my grandmother, I would not be here today. It's as simple as that. So thank you, Grandma. I've got some other people I need to thank really quickly. I need to thank my first journalism teacher and journalism advisor, Jan Heiting, at Downers Grove South. Jan taught me to be accountable. She taught me how to be a team player. And above all, Jan taught me never ever to accept mediocrity from you or one of your students if you can get something better. I need to thank Richard Connaughton, who is one of my English teachers at Downers Grove South. Thank you, Richard, for opening my eyes to literature. I'd like to thank Dr. Johnson's, I had two of them, and Dr. Van Krumpout from Northern Illinois University. I'd like to thank Joyce Brake, who is my cooperating teacher at Rochelle Township High School. And I'd like to thank all of my supervisors over the years who taught me so much, Pat, Janice, Eric, and Tracy, who have been so good to me. And I'd also like to just honor my literacy coaches or instructional coaches that we have at South, Kathleen and Jen, who taught me so much over the years. You know, I've been at Downers Grove South. I was actually a student at Downers Grove South. I graduated there. I wrote for the Blueprint, and then I became an assistant advisor. And then when I became head advisor, I had three simple goals. I wanted the newspaper to be well-written. I wanted it to be well-presented. I wanted it to be relevant. I wanted it to be a newspaper that people actually wanted to read. And I wanted to challenge not only my staff with the idea or the values of being honest, being thorough, being accurate, being aggressive, but never being cavalier, because there are always people behind these stories, right? And above all, I wanted to challenge our readers. I didn't want the paper to be mediocre, and I don't think it was. It got me into hot water a couple times with administrators. I think you're all aware of that. Although honestly, I think for the most part, the administrative staff at my high school has been very supportive. But you know, I had one of those moments. And I remember after the newspaper would be distributed, I'd walk around the hallway and I'd look into the doorways and into the windows of the classrooms and just see if people were reading the newspaper. And when I walked in and saw a bunch of kids holding up the newspaper, it was just the greatest feeling in the world, right? Because you produce something that people are actually using and reading. You know, what we do matters, and I'm not going to tell you anything you don't already know. Journalism is not perfect. Journalism has its flaws. But without journalists, democracy dies. It's as simple as that. We are the heart and soul and conscience of our government. We hold people accountable when they don't want to be held accountable. They don't like that. Politicians don't like that. And it doesn't matter who they are, what side of the political aisle. Journalists are never popular, and they're not popular for a reason. Okay? And so, as advisors, I think we try to instill the importance of the profession in our students. Yet, you know, sometimes I think journalists, have to be a little bit cynical, right? Because if you're not cynical, you can't really be a good journalist, because you're not going to go out and get the stories. You're not going to just be naively accepting what people tell you. On the other hand, I think as educators, we don't really have that luxury, do we? I think it's a trap that we've all fallen into. I've fallen into it myself many times. I don't want to sound like I'm judging anybody, because I'm not. It's really hard to do what we do, especially in English classroom and wherever we go. But as teachers, we need to learn how to see past disability and social economic status and race and religion, and even past political difference, which is not easy to do in this day and age, because we can sow the seeds that will come to fruition at some point for our students. And I think teaching is an act of faith. You know, we don't often see the results of our work, right? Because our students go off, they probably have forgotten us, they don't remember our names, we don't remember who they are, but you have to believe that you have planted some sort of seed that is going to grow and turn into something important. Now, if you're lucky like me, you've got several students who you stay in touch with and you know how successful they are. Rick is a perfect example. We've stayed in touch, and I've watched him grow and turn into a wonderful man. Jana Bartle, who took second place in sports writing in 2018 at this competition, now writes for The Athletic. She's an NFL reporter. And I can't tell you how special it is to open up my iPad every morning and see her name there, her byline. I mean, that's just a great thrill for me. If you're lucky, though, if you're really lucky, though, and I think I am, you'll get to follow a student's career more thoroughly. And I had a student years ago who was a junior in my very first English class that I taught at Downers Grove South. A very good student, kind of goofy, semi-responsible. And she was also a sports editor for the Blueprint. So I got a chance to work with her. I was the assistant advisor at that point. And I don't know how she did it, but she scammed her way into our high school as a student teacher and got to do her student teaching work at Downers Grove South, which is really unusual because most colleges don't let you do your student teaching at your old high school. So she did this, and what was really cool about this particular student is I got to see her as, it was hard to explain, but she looked exactly the same, but she was different. She was poised and mature and eager to learn, and I watched her grow over the course of my experience working with her as a cooperating teacher, learning and growing as a teacher. And then she left and she went to teach at another school. I eventually gave up being head advisor at Downers South, and a few years after I had given it up, she had come back because my successor had decided to leave, and she took the job, and I decided to become her assistant. And one of the things that I've gotten to do is I've watched this woman grow and then blossom into an advisor that is much better than I am. And it's truly a blessing. Thank you, Mary. I love you. You know that. Anyway, thank you, guys. It's been an honor.